Hey folks, welcome to AI in Motion, mostly working. So I want you to imagine a city where a bicycle and, I don't know, a massive, fully loaded 18-wheeler pay the exact same toll to use a bridge.
I mean, that sounds completely absurd.
Right? It sounds absurd, but right now, that is the exact economic model powering the Internet of Things.
Yeah.
Over the next 5 years, IoT traffic is projected to quadruple. Devices are multiplying at just this exponential rate. But, and here is the paradox Max and I are debating today, the wholesale operators, the companies actually carrying all this data, are watching their revenues completely flatline.
Or in some sectors actively decline, actually. It's a fascinating and, frankly, entirely counterintuitive economic reality.
It really is.
We're looking at a market that is exploding across every conceivable industry. Yet the financial return for the core connectivity providers simply isn't following that same curve.
Which is exactly why today we're debating how wholesale operators must adapt to actually capture the value of all these connected devices. I'll be arguing that legacy, volume-based pricing is completely obsolete. For wholesalers to survive, they have to abandon this whole one-size-fits-all approach. They need to structurally pivot, adopting specialized, capacity-based pricing to surgically target high-value use cases.
And I will be taking the opposing view. I'll argue that a wholesaler's true power always has been and absolutely remains in massive, standardized scale. Trying to artificially engineer complex, bespoke pricing structures at the wholesale infrastructure level is just a strategic mistake.
Let me give you the maths that should frankly worry every infrastructure provider right now. Historically, if you looked at a connected device ecosystem, providing the actual connectivity accounted for roughly 12% of the total value of that system.
Right. The historical baseline.
Exactly. But today, thanks to the explosion of edge computing, AI analytics, and massive cloud platform services, connectivity's share has shrunk. It's down to somewhere between 4 and 8%.
Which looks alarming if you're just staring at a spreadsheet, certainly.
Well, it's alarming in reality. We are witnessing one of the largest transfers of value from physical infrastructure to software in modern history. The wholesalers are laying all the expensive asphalt, while the software companies are driving luxury cars on it, completely for free.
Okay, but...
Let me just finish this thought. We're trying to sustain an entirely new generation of network demands using a 25-year-old per-megabyte pricing model. Take a remote-operated crane at a container port.
Okay.
The operator is sitting in an office miles away from the dock, and that crane is streaming a dozen live camera feeds back to them, continuously, with hard guarantees on latency. A 2-second lag when you're lowering 40 tons onto a ship is not a rounding error.
No. It's a very expensive accident.
That single machine moves terabytes of data every month. Now put next to it a connected rat trap in a restaurant basement.
A rat trap.
A rat trap. It sends one short message a week, and most weeks that message says nothing happened. Right now, both of those devices are being priced on the exact same underlying per-megabyte logic. It's economically unsustainable. Wholesalers have to prioritize tiered premium data pricing linked directly to the data intensity of the specific use case.
Okay, but if they don't do that?
If they don't, their margins are just going to be compressed into oblivion by systems integrators and cloud platforms.
Look, I understand the instinct to look at that shrinking percentage, that drop from 12 down to 4, and panic.
It's a big drop.
It feels like you're losing ground, yes. But you're looking at a smaller slice of a pie that is growing exponentially. The nominal dollar value of the IoT ecosystem is actively expanding. The total revenue available in the connectivity space is higher than it has ever been, simply because the sheer volume of devices and traffic is so massive.
But volume alone doesn't equal profitable revenue if the unit economics are fundamentally broken at the core.
Well, I come at it from a different way. Connectivity isn't shrinking in importance, it's evolving. We're shifting from an era where the only metric that mattered was sheer geographical coverage to an era completely focused on service-level agreements and deep interoperability. Wholesalers shouldn't pretend to be software companies.
I'm not saying they should.
But you're saying they need to capture the software margin. They don't. They need to run their own domain properly.
Run it how exactly? Because let's look at who is actually benefiting from that massive scale right now. AI and cloud companies are completely dominating the monetization of IoT. They sit at the top of the stack. They collect the data, they run the analytics, and they generate immense profits. Meanwhile, the wholesalers are left down in the dirt, carrying the immense physical network costs.
It's their infrastructure, yes.
But think about the cost. The actual cell towers, the fiber backhaul, the spectrum licenses, the energy to power it all. And they do it without capturing any of the resultant margin. So my question is this. If the physical network carries all the cost of a 4-fold increase in traffic, but the software captures all the margin, aren't wholesalers literally just building a free highway for cloud companies to get rich?
That assumes the wholesaler and the cloud company are playing a zero-sum game, which they aren't. The cloud company cannot generate a single cent of revenue without the network. You ask how they fix this? They do it by adapting the network itself through technological evolution, not by attempting to become retail software vendors.
Okay, so what does that technological evolution look like?
Wholesalers need to lean heavily into software-defined networks and AI-driven automation. Think about how network slicing works. Instead of physically building a brand new dedicated network for every demanding use case, you use software to virtually slice up the existing 5G pipe. You dynamically allocate a high-speed, ultra-reliable, low-latency slice for that port crane of yours, and simultaneously run a low-power, incredibly cheap slice for the rat trap, all on the same physical infrastructure.
Right, but
You automate the flow of traffic and the back-end settlement of contracts, so that your operational costs drop dramatically. You don't need to steal the cloud provider's margin if you can deliver massive customized volume with near zero human intervention.
that automation only solves the cost side of the equation. It completely ignores the revenue side, which brings us directly back to the pricing models. The legacy per-megabyte usage billing is completely broken.
How so?
Well, if that port crane and that rat trap are using the same automated network, treating them the same financially is a disaster. Charge the crane by the megabyte at the same baseline rate as the rat trap, and the cost becomes astronomically prohibitive. The port operator literally couldn't afford to run remote cranes.
Okay.
Conversely, if the wholesaler discounts their per-megabyte rate heavily just to win that massive port contract, they cannibalize their own margin across the board. This is why we have to shift to capacity-based pricing, a lump sum for massive data pipes. Or, even better, outcome-based pricing.
Outcome-based pricing? Give me an example of how a wholesaler manages that.
Take a fall detection pendant worn by someone elderly who lives alone.
Okay.
The actual data volume is tiny, a few kilobytes when the sensor detects a fall. But the intrinsic value of that connection isn't a kilobyte of data. It's a human life. The wholesale pricing should reflect the premium nature of that critical, high-reliability SLA, the guarantee that the message always gets through, not the raw kilobytes transmitted.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
Wholesale connectivity is like the commercial power grid. You don't charge a hospital a life-saving premium for the electricity running their ventilators. And you don't discount the power running a toaster in the staff break room. You charge for reliable capacity and uptime. If grid operators tried to price electricity based on what the power is actually used for, they would collapse under the administrative weight.
Well, sure, but
What you're describing, pricing based on the value of a human life, is entirely a retail function. Let the MVNOs, the ones who buy bulk data and repackage it, let them fight over creative outcome-based pricing. They should build the care home bundle. The wholesale layer needs durable, predictable volume commitments based on simple mechanics. An activation fee, a monthly line fee, a usage rate. Wholesale connectivity is like the commercial power grid, You don't charge a hospital a life-saving premium for the electricity running their ventilators, and you don't discount the power running a toaster in the staff break room. You charge for reliable capacity and uptime. If grid operators tried to price electricity based on what the power is actually used for, they would collapse under the administrative weight.
I'm not convinced, because your power grid analogy falls apart the second you look at capital expenditure. The commercial power grid doesn't require a multi-billion-dollar continuous architectural upgrade just to keep the toaster running.
Well, they do upgrade the grid.
Not like in telecom. The wholesaler is constantly forced to invest in wider bandwidth, denser cell sites, and upgraded fiber backhaul just to support the terabytes coming off those cranes and video feeds. If they are locked into simplistic, commoditized power grid pricing, they cannot recoup the capital required to upgrade the network. This one-size-fits-all commercial standardization era is over.
It's not over. It is exactly what allows the entire global ecosystem to scale.
Then look at what the market analysis of hundreds of enterprise use cases keeps showing. Wholesalers have to stop trying to be everyone to everyone. They need to surgically target specific use case clusters with high average revenue per user and low competitive intensity. Mission-critical sectors where reliability commands a premium and where expertise in one cluster carries naturally into the next. Get good at guaranteeing a port crane never drops its connection, and you're suddenly very credible in remote surgery robotics.
That's a compelling argument. But have you considered what happens to the lifeblood of this entire industry if you take that path?
Which is?
Volume. The inherent structural strength of a wholesale operator is commercial standardization that allows them to reach the massive long tail of emerging IoT opportunities. Yes, specialization has its place. If a wholesaler has a legacy footprint in healthcare, by all means, lean into it. But to suggest they abandon broad standardization in favor of surgical targeting is a massive strategic error. If you carve up your network to only serve niche premium use cases, aren't you gutting the very thing that makes the wholesale business model viable in the first place?
You only sacrifice the volume that is actively hurting your bottom line.
Volume doesn't hurt the bottom line if the operations are properly automated. And customers are becoming incredibly tech-savvy. They know exactly when they need local breakout, their data routing straight to a nearby data center for instant response. And when they just need global best-effort roaming, where a shipping container's location ping can take its time bouncing across international networks. A wholesaler that standardizes its offerings lets these savvy customers buy exactly what they need at scale. If you specialize too deeply, you create friction. Wholesale thrives on the absolute absence of friction.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. Friction is often just another word for barrier to entry, and barriers to entry are what protect your margin. When you chase broad, frictionless volume without specialization, you crash headfirst into commoditization.
Commoditization. I hear that used as a boogeyman constantly.
It's not a boogeyman, it's a mechanical process. Take connected washing machines.
Washing machines.
Every appliance maker is putting connectivity into white goods now. And initially, that segment looks fantastic on a quarterly board presentation. Millions of new connections. But once an appliance maker realizes they're going to ship 10 million connected machines, they don't want to negotiate data plans with a wholesale platform.
No, they go to the source.
Exactly. They go straight to the module makers, the silicon providers, and they bake the cheapest available global SIM profile directly into the circuit board at the factory. The platform gets completely locked out as a channel. The revenue per unit collapses, and the wholesaler is reduced to a commodity SIM price provider fighting over fractions of a cent in a blind bidding war. Once the volume gets big enough, the negotiating power belongs to the customer, and the window before total commoditization is months, not years.
But the fear of that exact process, the fear of cannibalization, is a defensive myth that has been holding the telecommunications industry back for 2 decades. Every time a disruptive technology emerges, the reflex from the old guard is defensive. How do we protect our legacy margin? IoT isn't a static market. High volume in a commoditized segment is still highly profitable if you radically automate the settlement and the traffic flow.
Taking on massive volume at commodity pricing is only mathematically sustainable if your underlying network costs fall at the exact same rate as your SIM prices. And right now, today, that is absolutely not happening. The cost of maintaining, securing, and upgrading global cellular infrastructure to handle a four-fold increase in traffic is not dropping to zero. So if your revenue per connection approaches zero, but your baseline cost to service that connection remains fixed, you are steering the business off a cliff. It doesn't matter how beautifully automated your billing system is.
But that assumes the network remains a static dumb pipe. It's not. The definition of the network is actively changing. If the wholesaler adapts, if they integrate with low Earth orbit satellite networks, if they provide proper lifecycle management and native eSIM orchestration through APIs at the wholesale level, they are providing immense value. That is how you manage the threat of commoditization. You don't run away from volume. You embed your network APIs so deeply into the operational orchestration of that volume that your service becomes indispensable.
Wait, but providing lifecycle management and bespoke eSIM orchestration is, by definition, moving away from simple standardized connectivity. It's a form of specialization. It requires a tiered approach, because not every use case needs advanced orchestration. That rat trap gets bolted to a basement wall and never moves for 10 years. It does not need the same eSIM orchestration as a logistics tracker crossing 3 international borders a day. You're implicitly acknowledging my point. Different use cases require fundamentally different wholesale treatment.
Recognizing that different devices have different technical routing requirements is not the same as adopting retail-style, outcome-based pricing. I can offer a universal API for eSIM orchestration at scale. That is still standardized, automated volume. It does not require me to price my bandwidth based on the intrinsic value of the cargo in the container.
Well, maybe it should.
The wholesaler provides the toolkit, the activation, the orchestration, the SLAs. The retail customer combines those tools to build their bespoke offering. The value capture for the wholesaler remains in moving millions of units efficiently, not in artificially inflating the price of a megabyte just because it happens to be tied to a high-value corporate asset.
Yet everything in the market data suggests that wholesalers who deeply understand the specific use case markets they serve will significantly outperform the generic tool providers over the next decade. When a wholesaler works the adjacencies, when expertise in keeping a crane connected becomes an advantage in connected healthcare, they capture the high-value clusters. By stubbornly clinging to a volume-first generic model, they are willingly ignoring the segments where the real IoT profit margin is hiding.
I would counter that the true goldmine isn't hiding in niche verticals. It's in the aggregation of the long tail. No single wholesale operator can perfectly address hundreds of enterprise use cases with bespoke offerings. If you focus solely on a few premium verticals, you are handing the vast majority of the market's growth directly to your competitors. Fragmentation isn't a signal to retreat into premium niches. It is a massive opportunity to be the universal, frictionless enabler across all of them.
So as we draw this to a close, my core position remains that the value in the IoT ecosystem gets captured by abandoning outdated per-megabyte pricing. The maths simply doesn't support it anymore. Wholesalers must actively target high-value, high-data use cases with specialized premium capacity tiers. Relying on massive volume at commodity prices while physical network demands skyrocket is a mathematical dead end.
And my position remains that a wholesaler's true structural strength is, and always will be, acting as the ultimate enabler through massive scale and radical automation. The nominal dollar value of the industry is expanding rapidly. Keep the pricing simple, durable, and scalable. Use AI and software-defined networks to structurally lower operational costs, and you can profitably serve the massive long tail without taking on the bloat of a retail software company.
I think where we genuinely agree is that the era of simply providing the broadest coverage and hoping the revenue follows is definitively dead.
Completely agree. The market is fragmenting. Enterprise customers are getting sophisticated, and there is no single silver bullet here.
Which brings us right back to that bridge we started with. The vehicles will undoubtedly keep coming, faster, heavier, and in greater numbers than ever before.
Without a doubt.
So whether the operators build intelligent toll gates that price the actual cargo being carried, or simply automate the gates, leave them wide open, and hope the sheer volume of traffic pays for the constant wear and tear on the road, is yet to be seen. Till next time, stay connected.